My name is Amit Thaker. I own and operate Referral GPS, but I'm not really the subject matter expert. I'm blessed this morning to be joined by two of our psychiatric nurse practitioners at an independent private practice here in the community. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of an intro and kind of tell you a little bit about what to expect today. The meat of the presentation today, and the content of what that you guys want to hear, is really by these two wonderful ladies who know a lot more than I do in this field. I want to start out with the perfect parent. And I want to tell you that the perfect parent doesn't exist. Now, I'm a parent of two kids myself. I have a 6 and a 7-year-old at home. And I'll tell you, it is the best job and also the worst job that you can have, right? Being a parent. And all of you guys know that acutely more than those who don't have those kids yet or may not have kids. And it's because, think about it, in any other job that you have things like paid time off. You don't have that as a parent. You get something called compensation. You don't really get that as a parent, although it does come in hugs and cuddles. You have people that you work with that truly appreciate you for what you do. And with a 6 and a 7-year-old, I'll tell you, there are times where they really appreciate me, and then there are times where I'm like, why did I sign up for this job? And I always try to think about, how am I going to be the best parent I can be for them? And the reality is, we are our worst critics. As parents, we're constantly looking in the mirror saying, I should have done that better. I should have done this better. I should be a better person or a better parent for my kid. And the reality is, the bar that you set for yourself will never be met, no matter what you do, because you want to be the perfect parent, and the perfect parent doesn't exist. And I have to constantly remind myself of that. Of course, I would love to be that person, but it doesn't exist. And stop beating yourself up trying to be the perfect parent. Just be you, because the reality is that's all they really need. Kids are a product of their environment. Right? And so, if you think about the culture that you've created within your own household, that environment and the energy that they bring in from that product is really who they're going to become. So if you want to change your kids' attitudes, or you want to change the way that your kids operate, or the way that they think, try changing the way that their environment is at home. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so I talk to parents often when I'm trying to help them get their kids connected into some type of mental health treatment. And oftentimes when we're done with that conversation, talking about what the kid may need and where we may be able to find some treatment for them, I'll stop and ask the parent, let me ask you, how are you doing? And almost every parent I talk to takes a huge sigh of relief going, you're the first person who's ever asked me how I'm doing. Right? Because I'm so stressed out about what's happening with my child, I'm not taking care of myself. No. Right? And the sheer amount of stress that's put upon our family unit by my child not doing well, right, that's a second consideration. I don't even really think about that. And yes, my kid is really struggling with anxiety. I struggle with anxiety. Right? And so oftentimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Almost any household that has one person in your pack struggling, there's going to be others affected, either directly or indirectly. But that ripple effect that happens when that stone is dropped into that lake, reverberates within that family unit. And so it's never really just an isolated piece. Come on, guys. It's never really an isolated piece. You got to just kind of remember that while you're really worried about the one who needs the most immediate help, all of us probably need that help. It's just to what extent and how much time we're going to spend on that component. One takeaway from today. The reason I have that up there is because I've sat in these seats, all through college and grad school. And as you're listening to lectures, it almost feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. Like the amount of information that's thrown at you is incredible. And the reality is, you're not really going to retain any of it, because it's too much info. And that's just how the human brain works. And so what I want you to do is not try to remember everything you hear here, but walk away with one thing. If there's one strategy you walk away from that you're like, I think I'm going to try that out at home. Or that's an interesting piece, let me write that piece down. Let me read a little bit more about that because that really strikes a chord with what's happening in my house. If you take away one thing from this presentation, it was worth you attending. Talk to me, creating safe spaces for conversation. So here's some of the topics we're going to be walking through today. Bridging two worlds together. It's an interesting piece. I talk to my mom about this all the time. And the funny thing is like a lot of the things that she struggled with as a parent, I struggle with as a parent. Even though we're like 35 years apart. Because the reality is like, as kids completely evolve and go through the different phases of their life, her world, back in the 70s, 80s, 60s was very different than my world in the 80s and the 90s, but a lot of the struggles are still the same. And so bridging those two worlds, I wasn't able to do until I became a parent and would talk to her about it. And most of the time, I'm not going to lie, she just laughs at me and says, you know that pain in the butt you're talking about right now? That's you. It's really hard to be a parent to yourself, a mini version of you. Because everything that annoys you about your child is probably something that you did as a child. And it's got to be the most gratifying thing as a parent to one day listen to your child complain about the things that irritated you as a parent. That's the joy she gets, right? We're going to talk about the conversation around drugs and alcohol, because it's much more prevalent now, at least spoken word, and just kind of in our culture and society, than it really ever was. We're going to talk about relationships and sex. I'll tell you, even till now, I've never had the bird and the bees conversation with my mom. That was never spoken about in our culture growing up. I don't think that that's a good thing. But times have changed. The culture has changed. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, is how do you even approach that conversation, particularly with many of us that have never had that conversation. Understanding an emotional outburst. I'll tell you, with a 6 and a 7-year-old at home, emotional outbursts are part of our daily routine. And I would love to say it's limited to just the children. But it's not, my wife excluded. But others in the household have been known to have emotional outbursts. Discussing suicide and self-harm, because it's really not talked about until it's too late. And afterwards, everyone always says, man, if only I knew, I would have had a conversation. Right? And so we're going to talk about how to have that conversation when and if it's needed. And then the do's and the do-nots of creating a safe space. So with that, I'm going to pass it over in the section of Bridging the Worlds Together to Ms. Jessica Casey.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I really appreciate it. Some really good points already made. And I just kind of want to add on that really quick that it really is no perfect parent. Even myself being a mental health professional, I have 3 children and I'm still learning as I go. So even I get stressed out and I'm still learning how to have these conversations with my children, and it's by no means perfect. So bridging the worlds together, I think the most important thing is to remember that we come from different generations from our kids. Even if you were a young parent, you had your child when you were 16, 17, 18, they're still very different generations. And so being mindful of your perceptions versus theirs makes a huge impact. You're never going to think the same way, ever. There are such big differences between when you grew up as a child, when they grew up. And so just being aware of those helps the conversation. Even when I'm talking with my son, he'll send me a meme and I'll be like, I do not understand that, but if you think it's funny, it's hilarious. And we just move about it. So we have differences in what we think is funny versus, other people. But what you can do is you can take the lessons that you learned and mold them to what is applicable to them. So I'm sure, like many of us, when we were little in middle school, we didn't have cell phones. And so, to us, it's like, kids are on their phones all the time. They're never on, playing outside and they're always on their phone. But the reality is that the world is based on technology now. Most schools are running on iPads and constantly doing lab time and stuff like that. So we're not going to remove the technology. But what we can do is say, okay, I saw the benefits of limited technology. How do I mold that to them? So maybe dinner time is like, hey, let's have a technology-free dinner. Or maybe after school we have 2 hours where we sit down and we do a board game, something creative, anything, whatever interests your child. to put that phone away and we're not looking at it at all. So that's kind of like, and that can apply to any lesson that you're trying. It's like, how did it impact me? Now, how can I make it fit into their life? And that feels really good to them. It feels less restrictive, and it feels like you understand where they're coming from. We want to try and build a positive self-esteem. I mean, even my teenager, I'm just like, get with the program. And he still wants to hear from me, like, great job on that test. Like, you did really good. Or he'll show me a drawing, and he still wants me to, ooh and ah over it, just like when he was 5. So we think that when they're getting older that like, they need to be more independent and they need to learn these hard life lessons, but they still want to have that approval from us. I mean, even as an adult, I look to my mom like, hey, did I do a good job? Did you like that? It was good, right? And it feels good. And it feels good throughout their entire lifespan. So building that positive self-esteem, asking how their day was, telling them that you're proud of them, especially when it comes to grades. I know all of us, even to my son, I'm saying you have to get A's and B's. You have to, because if you want to go to college, nobody's going to accept, C's and D's on there. But maybe there's a reason why there's C's and D's. Maybe they're an artist, and that's why math is not doing so great. So let's praise them for the things that we're good at instead of making them fit into the mold to feel good about their talents. You always want to encourage questions and conversations because they are learning about the world. I mean, they want to know things. Having an open door policy where they don't feel like they can't ask or like it's embarrassing or like mom's going to get in trouble and ask why I'm asking this. They're just learning. At home, I kind of have this open door policy where it's like, you ask me a question and I'm just going to answer it, no questions asked. And I've gotten questions such like, what about this drug? Like, what does it do to you? And I'm not going to sit there and go, well, why are you asking me that? Are you doing drugs? Do you know somebody that's doing drugs? No, because then he's not going to want to come to me, he feels accused. So I answer the question. It's going to make you feel like this. These are the consequences of it. Do you have any other questions? And he walks away. And what that does is show him that like you can just come ask these questions about life that I don't want you learning on Google, that I don't want you learning through friends who may have inaccurate information, and I'm a source of truth for you to help where I can. And to that point, even if you don't know the information, be honest. I tell him, I'm like, I don't know, let's figure it out together. And then we use our resources to find out the accurate response to what he's looking for. You also want to get to know who their friends are. It's really important because their friends are important to them. So asking specific questions like, hey, how was Claire today? What did you and your friends talk about that was really exciting? Sometimes I ask my son, like, any juicy gossip you want to tell me about in school? Because I just want to know what's going on. And then I know what's going on. And then he shares with me because he's like, you have to hear what happened in the bathroom, whatever. So that's really important too. On the flip side, getting to know who they have conflict with is super important. Even to this day as an adult, I have conflict with people that I either have to be around, I go to the grocery store and I don't like somebody, whatever it may be, that little conflict I deal with as an adult. So knowing who your child may have conflict with and helping them navigate that is really, I can see how you feel upset about that. Like, what is the conflict and how can we prevent that conflict in the future, is helping them not only to, regulate their emotions, but know how to deal with it long term, because it's something that we just all are, exposed to even as adults. So I know it's kind of tough, when you're hearing all these things and it's like, well, what about a real world example? So one of the patients that I've seen, comes in, they're 12-year-old, they're saying that they're on edge, they're depressed, and, mom's telling me he's always on his phone, he has nothing to be depressed about, and he's just exploding when he gets home, and he won't talk to me, and she seems very upset herself because she just feels like she can't get through to him. So, that feedback is really important. And then you take a look at what the child is saying to you and what their perception is, and they're saying, hey, mom doesn't understand me, and I just feel like I can't keep up in class, and I can't listen to conversations with my friends, and I don't know what to do, and I'm overwhelmed. So how would communication in that situation help? Well, if mom was a little bit more open and felt that, wasn't accusing him of the technology and stuff like that, she would learn that he feels isolated. And he feels that he can't pay attention in class. And he feels like his friends don't like him anymore. That's a horrible feeling, even as an adult, when, I have somebody who stops talking to me. I'm like, what did I do? How do I fix that? And so communication in that situation would help the mom be a little bit more understanding, even if she didn't agree with it. So I would ask the mom, when did this start? What do teachers think? I would ask teachers feedback and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, what I actually discovered is that this child was suffering from ADHD. A lot of people think ADHD and they're thinking a little 7-year-old running around, can't sit down, but ADHD can present in many different ways. And so this child was not able to focus in class or conversations with his friends, and that was a breeding ground for depression. So if we help with that with medication, or sometimes parents like to start with kind of training for tasks, how do we keep on task, stuff like that first, which is absolutely fine. We can then eliminate that depression that is coming from the underlying cause of ADHD. So it's really important, that communication piece, so that we can find out what's going on, because sometimes there is a cause for it and it's for no reason. Those outbursts that they're having when they come home from school, they're overstimulated. I mean, it's been a whole day of trying to pay attention. Imagine how exhausted they feel. I mean, we go to work for 8 hours a day and we feel exhausted, and then I kind of want to explode too, just like Amit said, we all have our little outbursts. I mean, that's perfectly normal. So that's, kind of an example of something that there was an underlying piece missing that we want to be mindful of. So I want to move into one of the big topics, drugs and alcohol. This is a big topic for everybody. Everybody has their own opinions and values and beliefs when it comes to drugs and alcohol, and they're absolutely valid. But what you need to make sure that you keep in mind is to stay factual. You don't want to show bias, okay? Pure factual. Some people will say to their children, cocaine is really bad, but sometimes edibles are okay. And what you did just there is you gave your child the impression that, okay, marijuana's cool. There's no, reason with that. But the reality is, even though that it's legal, there can be consequences. Consequences in school, consequences with the law, they're underage, there's safety concerns. So we don't want to insert that bias there. You want to take advantage of teachable moments. We don't need to sit down at the table with one across from the other, staring at each other, everybody's sweating, and everybody feels uncomfortable to have this big conversation. You're watching TV, someone's drinking alcohol, if someone's doing a drug. Let's talk about it. Do you know what that is? Do you know how that affects you? Do you know what the consequences are? What are your thoughts on that? Just asking them what they know, what their thoughts on it. You can insert little teachable things in there to make sure that they have factual information. Those teachable moments can be found every day, every week, every month, every year, and they add up. And they're more impactful than that big sit-down conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, if something does happen, I always encourage people to have a big sit-down conversation. So if you do find out if your child is using drugs, let's take time to sit down and talk about that specifically, yes. But in a proactive sense, these little teachable moments make a big impact. Now, how you talk to your child is gonna differ from each age group. And I have 8 to 12 years old and then 13 plus. That's just an estimate because each child is different. Some maybe are a little bit more mature, some maybe need a little bit more hand-holding. That's okay. But when you're talking to an 8 to 12-year-old, I just ask, what do you know about this? What did your friends say? I almost make it fun to tell me. And then you thank them for telling you, oh, thank you. After they're finished talking, you don't interrupt them, make sure you follow up with factual age-appropriate information. You don't want to tell them they're wrong, or that's wrong, or their friend is wrong, because that's going to build in a little bit of shame around it. You're going to say, actually, since I'm an adult, I know X, Y, Z. And if you have any other questions, you can always come to me. Now, when we're dealing with 13 plus, obviously we're going in a little bit of high school, we're getting older, there's more chances that they're going to be exposed to drugs and alcohol and presented with the opportunity to try them. So not only are you going to, ask what they know, how they feel about that, but you're going to make sure that there's a safety plan in place. The reality is, at the end of the day, as much as we don't want our kids to do drugs and alcohol, they're going to find themselves in that situation. Whether they decline the drugs and alcohol or not is highly specific to each child. The only thing that we can do is make sure that they are prepared with information and they come home safe to us. That is it. Lecturing not to do drugs is never shown to be effective because it builds in that shame and kind of a little bit of rebellion, don't push the red button. Sometimes kids want to push the red button, I myself included. But making sure that they are ready and they feel safe and to reach out to you. I always tell my child or any teens that I see in the office, do you feel comfortable reaching out to mom if you were in a situation? Do you have a plan to get home safely? And if they don't, we work on that. That is the number one priority with them, in addition to making sure they have factual information. We want to also too, in that conversation of making sure that they feel comfortable reaching out, do they have a plan to turn down drugs and alcohol? There are some kids who are really shy in friend groups, and they might feel awkward and like, these kids are gonna reject me if I say no. So like maybe there's a code word they text you and then you call them and they have to come home immediately, right? So that works for that child. Maybe there's another child who's really bold and they just like don't care and they know how they're gonna phrase it and they feel comfortable with that. So making sure that each child specifically knows how they would handle that situation and has a plan B. So because I always know when I go into situations, I'm like, this is how it's gonna go. It doesn't go that way, having a plan B. So that's really important about that. But I think ultimately the takeaway is factual information and making sure there's a safety plan to get home to you at the end of the day if they were to do drugs or alcohol. The next big topic is relationships and sex. I know this is really uncomfortable for some people. Kind of going back to the drugs and alcohol, it's really specific to your family, to your values, your beliefs, and that is absolutely okay. So we use that again and tailor it to the child specifically. They learn these things at a super young age. They see mom and dad or two partners interacting and how they're interacting. They see it on TV, even their shows. I think Bubble Guppies is one that my kids watch, and it still has relationships in there. So they're learning about that from a young age. So these conversations can start at a really young age. The important thing like this, just like drugs and alcohol, is kind of using that factual information and correct terminology. Because not only does this reduce that anxiety and shame that comes with sex and relationships, but it's also really important for especially young children if they need to get help when there is an issue. There have been several instances where a young child is using vocabulary that is used at home and they're telling another adult, whether it be in daycare or in school, and that adult doesn't know what they're saying because they're not using correct terminology. So as awkward as it is, we have to use that correct terminology because it's going to set them up for success. We also want to make sure that, we take our beliefs and our values, but we also use it to provide correct, comprehensive sex education, because that has shown not only to lead to safer sex, but delayed sexual experiences. And I think as parents, that's all what we're kind of hoping for. I know my son, he's 15, and I'm like, you're not ready, okay, so just slow down. But just like drugs and alcohol, there's going to be a situation where they might, be in a relationship with somebody, and so we want to make sure that we're making them as safe as possible. So just like drugs and alcohol, topics are going to change based on their age. Obviously, if we're talking 2 to 5, we're talking about, your body parts, what is private versus public. I know we all had that 3-year-old that's in the grocery cart lifting up their dress, and they're like, "Woo, we don't do that in public," right? So we're starting really young, and they're learning about that, like what's okay, what's socially, and kind of teaching them about their body without introducing like shame. If we're talking about early elementary, some kids are like asking how babies are born. So we talk about that in a very age-appropriate way, whatever works for your child. When we start getting to late elementary school, they might have even more questions, and they're asking you about, maybe partners, or I know sometimes they're like, I have a girlfriend, and it's like, what does that mean to you, right? What does it mean to have a girlfriend? And so you're kind of exploring what their perception is of relationships. Now, when we start to get to middle school, I know it seems young, but this is where you really want to start talking about perhaps pornography, because kids have cell phones. And like, what do you know? What have your friends known? And providing real, information back on that. You might start talking about contraception and, the health of your reproductive system. A lot of schools already provide that education. So I encourage everybody, like, depending on what class they're in, finding out what is being talked about so you can kind of amplify that. And again, using that as an opportunity to like answer questions. I mean, sometimes kids have like such random questions. I'm like, I don't even know where you heard that, but sure, let's talk about it, and they're just learning about the world. And then high school, again, we can't prevent kids from having sex or being in relationships, but what we can do is promote safety. So we really, want to talk about navigating sexual experiences. What does consent look like? Especially too, a lot of people think like no means no, but sometimes no is in the unspoken. And so talking about, being respectful of other people's boundaries and things like that, doing safe sex. And then also talking about ground rules very specific to your household. So, depending on what religion or what values you have, talk about what's important to you in an open way to your child. Maybe you don't believe that the child should have sex before marriage. Give them a reasoning why. Kids don't like to be told what to do because mom said so. So if you can provide a backing as to like, hey, our religion believes this and it's important to me. What are your thoughts about that? And maybe you can come to a compromise. Maybe they will understand and hold that value too, but really having an open door conversation. So again, at the end of the day, relationships and sex kind of follow the same theme as drugs and alcohol. It's promoting safety. It's promoting that open door policy. Like, let's have a conversation. What questions do you have? So that we can prepare them to be safe and come home to us and well-rounded adults. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jennifer, to talk about emotional outbursts.
So I did want to first bring up 2 different case studies that I've seen. I know Jeff said that it's helpful to hear about real life experiences. So my first patient that I wanted to discuss with you guys is a 15-year-old male. He came to my office for medication management, and during our initial assessment, we talked about the transition into high school. He had mentioned he's been using weed every day. He uses it before school, during school, at night, before he goes to bed. He also had mentioned to me that he's been drinking on the weekends with his friends, and he's been touching gambling a little bit and doing some gambling with his friends as well. So that conversation with this patient in particular was really revolved around the safety of all of the different substance use and the gambling. We talked through, when are you using, why are you using, and where are you getting it from? Like Jess mentioned, it's legal. So there are dispensaries, which is a safer way of getting weed, but there's also weed out there that's laced. So I like to educate him on, you don't know what's in it if it's coming from a little baggie from a person you don't know. So we talk a lot about the safety of the actual substance and then the use around it. A big discussion we always have in our sessions is, what are you going to do if you get caught? What does getting caught look like when you're smoking before school, during school, after school? Getting caught by the school, getting caught by the police. Do you know what a DUI is? Right? Like, are you in the car with other people that are using substances? What does a DUI mean to you? And what does that look like? So having that safety education with this patient in particular has been helpful in just lessening the amount he's using, knowing the repercussions of it. But then we talk about, why are you using? What is it making you feel? Is it making you feel calm? Is it making you feel happy? Is it making you feel motivated? Is it ruining your grades? Right? Are you smoking before school and then not able to pay attention in school? Is it making you feel like you can pay attention better? So knowing the underlying reason behind why you're using, because we know substances do things to our brain, right? And younger brains are at risk of things happening that aren't as healthy as older people whose brains are already developed. So it's really getting to the nitty gritty of the use of the why behind it and how it affects their mental health and their function. Another patient that I've seen in the office is a 17-year-old female. She came in for medication management. And when we first started talking, she had mentioned to me that she does drink on the weekends with her friends. She has a couple beers on the weekends. She's safe about it. She doesn't drive when she's drinking. She says it makes her feel a little bit social. It makes her anxiety go away when she is socializing. And mom knows about it. So mom helps her get home safely. Mom helps her if she needs a ride, if one of her friends starts drinking while she's driving. So her and mom have good communication about it, knowing that she's going to drink anyway. All her friends are doing it. But the new thing was that she started vaping. She started vaping all day. I mean, as you guys probably know, it's very easy to vape. People take their vape everywhere, right? It's not like you have to step outside to use the vape anymore. So her and I started, so she disclosed that to me in one of our recent visits, and that was new. So I had asked her, why are you vaping? What is that doing for you? And she had said, it helps me calm down. It helps me when I'm in class and I can't pay attention. I have to get up, I go to the bathroom, I vape, and I come back and I'm able to focus again. So that opened up our conversation to ADHD. And knowing that she had gotten an evaluation, she had a previous diagnosis, we're not taking any medication for it, and I had said, maybe now is a good time. Maybe let's talk to mom about starting a stimulant, getting you on something to help you feel like you can focus during the day, that's better for you than nicotine, and that's not going to get you in trouble at school. So those were 2 conversations that I had in the office. Again, I don't condone and encourage substance use, but if the kids are doing it anyway, how are we making it safe? Understanding your teen's emotional outbursts could be an inability to cope. So as we've talked to a couple times already about temper tantrums and outbursts, they're usually a sign that your kid's uncomfortable and they're not able to express it with their words. So it's important to kind of understand the outbursts, right? Like, everybody knows outbursts are hard to manage. They could set your day back, but your kids aren't having an outburst to ruin your day. They're really just trying to tell you that something's wrong. Outbursts are signs of different kinds of emotions, discomfort generally. You know, I'm anxious, so I'm gonna have a temper tantrum. I'm uncomfortable, I'm hungry, I'm tired. Same thing that we feel in the evenings, our kids just aren't that great at verbalizing it. So instead of trying to, you know, avoid the outburst, maybe learning from it and trying not to punish your child for having an outburst, but really trying to let them have it and then talk through it afterwards. There's patterns behind outbursts. So really looking into like, you know, last time we went to this place, my kid really wasn't comfortable. She had a temper tantrum. So next time we go to this place, maybe we do it a little bit differently. Maybe we make sure she's fed, or maybe we make sure that she feels good and is ready to go. Don't just spring it on her and then have her be there and be uncomfortable. It could be a symptom of anxiety, it could be a symptom of depression, having an outburst. It also could be autism. People with autism have a really hard time verbalizing their emotions, so sometimes it results in yelling and hitting and screaming and just feeling so overwhelmed and having so much angst that they have to release it somehow. So instead of trying to shush them and tell them to stop, maybe let it out, especially if you're at home and it's a safe place to do it, and then talk through it afterwards. So I see a lot of adults. I have a lot of adult patients that come to me and say this kind of thing, you know, I get so frustrated, I'm so impatient, I'm so snippy at my kids. And you don't want to show up like that for your children. So what can you do? Amit already mentioned, but the first thing that I would like you guys to do is just take care of yourself. Get back to the basics, get good sleep, feed yourself healthy foods, get your movement in, or get any way of kind of like getting through the day with some exercise to get rid of that pent up stress and energy. If you're showing up stress to your child, they're going to feed into that and they're going to absorb that kind of stress. So knowing when you need to seek support, when you need to step away. There's something called tap out. You know, if you are lucky and have a co-parent or you have a partner with you or a good support system, tap out. Ask your significant other, you know, I'm not feeling it today. Can you take over? I know I'm not going to be okay in this conversation. Can you have this with our child today? Or maybe even looking inward and saying like, oh, what's really bothering me that my child chewing is driving me nuts? Because it's not your child chewing that's driving you nuts. It's something that happened earlier that day that's probably driving you nuts, that's making you want to yell and snap at your child. If you feel the tension rising in your conversation with the person you're with, whether it's your child or a family member, identifying the emotion and walking away is a good way to exemplify how to handle conflict. And it also is giving your child permission to have feelings subconsciously, because you're going to say things like, I'm feeling myself getting really angry, I'm going to step away from this conversation and revisit it when I've calmed down. Avoid yelling and fighting and letting the tensions rise in the household is a good way to show your child how to handle conflict instead of having that outburst. So another topic that's important to talk about and that could be very uncomfortable to be had in the household is the risk of suicide and self-harm. So what can you look for and what are you asking your child about when it comes to suicide and self-harm behavior? Most important is, what do they look like, right? How are they showing up on a daily basis? Do they look okay? Do they look healthy? Are they neglecting their hygiene? Are they isolating themselves? Are they looking like they're secluding themselves after school every day? Are they making threats? If you have access to their phones or if you see school assignments or things that like where they're writing or expressing themselves, like what does that expression look like? Does it say, I want to kill myself? Are you saying things like, I am so depressed, I'm so hopeless, I don't know what to do with myself? Typically, threatening suicide for children is a way of releasing emotional pain. It's not really that they want to die or they want to end their life, but they do use the harsh words in that, I don't want to live anymore. So hearing that from your child could be very difficult. It could be very uncomfortable. But what can you do as a parent? You can listen and not panic. There's instances where your child's going to say things that you don't really want to hear or that are going to make you really uncomfortable, but the last thing that they want to see you do is panic and go, run to call someone or run to call 911. Hear them out and have that conversation with them and let them know you're there for them and then seek support.
So one of the things that I want to add is that, sometimes it truly is just expression. I always suggest safety first. But I have been through this with my own son who was saying that he wanted to kill himself, and even as a mental health provider, I was immediately pulling the red flag. I drove him immediately to Linden Oaks to be admitted because I was deathly terrified. But what actually happened is he was not asking for help, and he actually didn't want to be admitted to inpatient, and he thought that I was punishing him and he was very scared about everything getting taken away. And I backtracked almost 1,000 miles with conversations with him because I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And I always thought safety first. But what he was really doing is being kind of exaggerative about how he was feeling. You know, he just wanted to say that he felt so down that here's the exaggeration. And he wanted to talk about it. And so now that I have repaired that communication with him, sometimes he's kind of funny and he'll be like, Mom, today was just the day that I want to take the big nap, if you know what I'm saying. And we kind of laugh about it because he just wants to express himself. So I think, you know, all of what we have said before about communication is important in opening that line so you can know when it's serious and when they're just trying to kind of communicate this exaggeration about how they feel and feel like you understand and to hear them. So it's very jarring to hear, and like I said, I know, but kind of making sure that you're seeing where they're coming from and just being there for them sometimes is what they're looking for.
And on the other note, the self-harm behaviors. Self-harm is usually things like cutting yourself, burning yourself, or scratching yourself, or pinching. And common places for that are arms and thighs. So if you are concerned about self-harm behavior from your child, it is another way of emotional release and getting like the sensation of pain as a way of coping with hard and painful emotions. But look out for your teen that's wearing the long sleeves in the summertime or that's wearing long pants when it's really warm out. That could be a sign that there's some self-harm behavior going on, and you can always ask your teen about it and then seek help. Asking your child about suicide is not going to instigate suicidal behavior. That's a myth that I want to debunk right now. Asking your child if they're suicidal is not going to make them suicidal. Asking them is going to open the door to have the communication and the conversation around hard feelings and tough times. If there is suicidal thoughts or there is self-harm behaviors going on, you can always call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's 988. You can text the crisis text line, or your child can, and then you can text TALK to 741-741. Those are trained counselors who know how to do a risk assessment and how to de-escalate suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, and self-harm behaviors. You can also always call 911. If you are panicking and you are in the moment and you don't know what else to do, you can always call the police and let them know, I'm concerned about my teen, I would like a wellness check. Or you can take him to the nearest ER. So the do's and don'ts, or the do's and do nots of creating a safe space. So kind of a summary of what we've talked about. Talk about your own mental health. Be vulnerable. Show your emotions. Talk about your emotions with your kids. It gives them the subconscious, like that they can talk about theirs too. It gives them that permission. Don't try to minimize or try to avoid talking about feelings. It's making it difficult, and it's teaching the children that feelings are not okay, and that's not healthy for them. So minimizing ways to minimize feelings are things like, you're fine, get over it. You're good, don't worry about it. You shouldn't feel that way, it's okay. Saying things along the lines of, I understand that this is really hard for you. It makes sense why you feel this way. So do validate, don't minimize. Actively listening to your child is going to take you a long way. Eliminate the distractions. We've mentioned cell phones, they're very distracting. So are other children in the room. So are pets. So is the TV. So really giving your child eye contact and showing them, hey, I'm here for you. I'm listening to you. I want to hear what you have to say. Is going to give them that space to want to talk to you. Appear patient and non-judgmental, but don't give advice if they're not asking for it. A good thing or a healthy thing you can say is, what do you want from me from this conversation? Do you want to hear what I think you should do? Do you want to hear my advice, or do you just want me to listen? Because sometimes teens just want to vent, as Jess has mentioned, and sometimes they don't want your advice in that moment. They're not ready to hear it. So asking permission to give advice versus just giving it unwarranted or unwanted. Don't rush through the conversation just because you probably start to panic. It's hard to hear things that your kid's going through. Try to stay patient, try to take deep breaths during the conversation and give them the space to talk to you and give them the closure that they need. Don't gossip with your child, but do check in. Show genuine curiosity in their life, in their friends, because that's the most important thing with them right now, and how they're doing in school and what they want their future to look like. So ask open-ended questions. How was your day today? Tell me something that you did. Tell me something funny that's happening with your friends. Don't try to avoid, I should say, yes or no questions, because that's going to end the conversation. They're going to walk right upstairs.
Thank you. But one of the question was how to ask a sensitive question about sexuality. My favorite tactic as a parent is to kind of like just be real with them. So a lot of times I ask my kids like, hey, I have a question, and like this may sound stupid, but like I don't even know. Like, just is this true, or is this like how this is, or like, hey, I have this question, and it kind of feels awkward for me to ask. Really getting on their level that like you don't know everything, and that you feel awkward makes them feel more comfortable. You might not get a response right away, and I would say like, hey, I just had a question about this. Like, if you don't want to answer me, that's cool, dude. Like, but know that I'm just kind of curious, and I want to help you with it. If you don't get a response right there, don't keep asking them until they, respond. You might say, hey, come to me when you're ready to talk, or maybe like, you can write it down or something like that. But just being real with them about you being open and honest and just curious really helps that. Another one was how to introduce my kid to therapy when she's not asking for it. Everybody needs therapy. I need therapy. My dog probably needs therapy. It's a good place to start. So I always tell them like, hey, you're getting to this age, and like a lot of people go to therapy just to have someone to talk to that's not mom or dad. What do you think about that? Like, I know a couple people who have their kids going and there's nothing going on, but they just like talking to somebody. What are your thoughts about that? Because a lot of times they may say like, I want a female provider, or like, yeah, I want that. If they say no, they don't want that, that's okay. Just say, hey, whenever you think you're ready for that, let me know and I'll help you with that. So kind of just like leaving it open to them, their thoughts and perceptions is very helpful.
So I want to answer this really quickly. The first steps to get tested for ADHD is a neuropsych evaluation. That's something that a clinical psychologist does. It's covered by insurance at this day and age. So there's people online that search neuropsychiatric evaluation by a clinical psychologist. That's testing. You can also schedule with a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner like one of us, or a psychologist to do an assessment, but the testing that gets you help with accommodations for school is through a neuropsych evaluation.
And to that point, if you don't know where to start with any mental health provider, social worker, prescriber, psychologist, and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll help direct you in the right direction.